Hello, and welcome back to Weird on the Rocks. This is a podcast that explores the weird, unusual, strange, and unexplained, all while getting our drink on. I'm your host, Katie. Today, I'm going to be talking about the very mysterious and controversial abduction of Sherri Papini. This is something that happened in November of 2016 in Redding, California, which is in Shasta County. And Redding is only about 3 hours away from where I live in Eureka, so I remember this being a very big deal at the time. After her abduction, people were posting her photo all over Facebook and saying things like, "Please bring this beautiful mother home." This beautiful young woman, wife, mother was gone without a trace, and it really was such a scary and tragic thing to happen. But 3 weeks after her abduction, Sherri Papini showed back up and gave questionable details that made many doubt her story. Today, I'm going to tell the story of Sherri's abduction and what she says happened to her, and then I will present some of the conflicting information authorities have discovered in regards to her abduction. I hope that in today's episode, you can keep an open mind, and at the end, hopefully, you'll have an opinion on what you really think happened to Sherri Papini. But before we get into the good stuff, I want to share this week's beverage of choice. Today, I'm drinking some good old Tito's vodka with some blueberry lemonade, and I blended it up with ice, and I added some blueberries in it too. I actually, this past weekend, had a spooky themed pool party, like RIP my 20s. I was mourning my youth, and I made this drink for some of my friends, and it was so good, and it's really nice on a warm day. So you really can't go wrong with vodka and lemonade, in my opinion. All right, well, let's get into it. Cheers, and let's get weird. In November of 2016, Sherri Papini was a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom living in Redding, California. Sherri is very beautiful with long blonde hair, big eyes, beautiful white teeth, and is in very good athletic shape. She lived with her husband Keith, who worked at Best Buy, and their 2 young children, Tyler, 4, and Violet, 2. Loved ones of Sherri described her as a super mom with a perfect life. They said, if you asked Sherri to bake a pie, not only would she bake it quick, but it'd be 10 times better than any pie you've ever had. On November 2nd, 2016, a day like any other, Sherri stayed home while her husband Keith went to work at Best Buy. He worked there as a technician who would come to people's homes and help with their TVs and computers. That morning, Sherri dropped her children off at daycare around 9 a.m., something she did every day. Around 10:30 a.m., she texted her husband Keith to ask if he was coming home for lunch, to which he replied that it was a crazy day and he wouldn't have time. This was the last contact Keith would have with his wife for 3 weeks. Around 5:30 p.m. that night, Keith came home to find Sherri and their 2 children were not home. Now, in the information I can find online, it says that Keith found out Sherri hadn't picked their children up from daycare that day, as usual, but I couldn't find anywhere whether he called the daycare to check or if they contacted him. But Keith was very worried because Sherri was always home at this time with the children. Without calling or texting Sherri first, he instead used the Find My iPhone app, which tracked Sherri's phone to the intersection of Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, about a mile from their home. Sherri's phone and earbuds were on the side of the road in some grass, with a few blonde strands of hair tangled in them. At 5:51 p.m., Keith called 911. He told the dispatcher, "I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again, and it's cracked down her phone, and it's got like hair ripped out of it, like in the headphones, so I'm totally freaking out thinking like somebody grabbed her." As the 911 call continued, Keith became more and more concerned and kept repeating, "Oh my God, oh my God." The sheriff's department responded immediately and within a few hours had a ground and air search happening. Flyers were distributed, a televised press conference was held, and hundreds of people searched the forests and rivers for Sherri. On November 5th, 3 days after Sherri's disappearance, with no word from her, a Papini family friend named Lisa Jeter received a phone call from a third-party contact who said they have an anonymous donor who would like to donate money to get Sherri back. Lisa approached Keith with this offer, which he turned down because he thought it might take away from the search efforts. The community continued to search for Sherri and even held a balloon releasing vigil where community members came together and released balloons into the air, and people got up and spoke about Sherri. However, around this time, the Shasta Sheriff's Department began to believe that Sherri had most likely been moved out of the area. Around this time, Shasta County Sheriff Tom Bosenko also decided to conduct a polygraph test on Keith Papini, Sherri's husband, who was adamant that he had nothing to do with his wife's disappearance. Keith passed the lie detector test, and his alibi of being at work at the time she disappeared was confirmed. On November 10th, Keith Papini sat down for an interview with People magazine, hoping to spread the awareness of Sherri's disappearance. Through tears, Keith said, "Please, just bring her home. Bring her home." After 5 more days of no further information, Keith contacted his friend Lisa Jeter and asked if he could contact the anonymous donor and see if he was still interested. The anonymous donor was still interested, but he said he would need a local community member to be a liaison between him and the media, since he wanted to remain anonymous. Neither Keith Papini or Lisa Jeter felt comfortable doing this, but Lisa knew someone who might. She contacted a man named Cameron Gamble, who she had met through her local Rotary Club and who worked as a captivity survival expert at Bethel Church in Redding, where he trained teenagers who were going to be missionaries on how to defend themselves. Cameron Gamble says he sat down with the anonymous donor and Keith Papini together, and they explained to Keith the idea of offering $50,000 for the safe return of Sherri, and Keith agreed. Cameron then recorded a video speaking directly to her captors, saying that no questions would be asked as long as she was returned safely, and this video was posted online and on TV. They set a deadline for November 21st, giving the captors 3 days to respond, but the deadline came and went with nothing. Cameron, Keith, and the anonymous donor then hatched a new plan. They upped the dollar amount to $100,000, but instead of it being reward money for turning Sherri in, it was a bounty. On November 23rd, Cameron recorded another video saying that whoever could find the people responsible for Sherri's abduction would get the $100,000. But not even 24 hours later, at 5:30 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day morning, a motorist was driving down the I-5 in Yolo County, California, when they noticed a woman on the side of the highway waving a shirt. The motorist pulled over, and the woman waving the shirt said she was Sherri Papini. Her long blonde hair had been chopped to her shoulders. She had several cuts and bruises on her body and what looked like a broken nose. Sherri told this woman who had picked her up, Alice Sutton, that she had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women and held captive. Alice Sutton immediately called 911. Sherri was brought to the hospital where she was treated for her injuries and questioned by Sheriff Bosenko. Sherri says that she was running and was taken 2 Hispanic women driving a van, one with straight hair and one with curly hair. She said one was young and one was old. She said they both wore bandanas over their mouths and nose and were both armed. She said they blindfolded her and took her somewhere she didn't know and held her captive for 22 days, beating her on and off. She said they then loaded her back into the van and dropped her off on the side of the highway. On December 5th, Keith sat down once again with People magazine to tell his and Sherri's side of the story. Sherri told him she only survived because she kept thinking about her husband and her 2 children, Tyler and Violet, and it gave her the strength to stay alive. Keith described how Sherri's weeks in captivity have stuck with her, both physically and psychologically. He said, "When lights are off, when doors shut, when she hears certain sounds, it's something that I don't know how to deal with, and we'll need somebody who can help her through that from a professional standpoint." Since her reappearance, Sherri Papini has not done any interviews. Immediately after Sherri was found, the entire community was elated, and many were saying it was a Thanksgiving miracle. All seemed well, and everyone was happy that Sherri was home safe with her family. However, soon people began to look further into Sherri's story, which started to raise many doubts. I am now going to discuss the many odd details that emerged that have many, and even the Shasta Sheriff's Department, questioning if Sherri Papini was truly abducted and if she's telling the whole truth. The first detail I'm going to discuss is the 2 women that Sherri said abducted her. the sheriff's department made and released 2 sketches of the women Sherri claimed abducted her. The sketches were widely distributed, and the Shasta authorities began their search for the women. However, their search came up empty, and they could not find anyone in their database that fit Sherri's descriptions of these 2 women. However, they did find 2 Hispanic women that matched her descriptions who were in jail at the time of Sherri's disappearance. These 2 women had been arrested just a few weeks before Sherri disappeared for a violent crime that occurred on a pot farm in Shasta County. The photos of these 2 women were printed in the local paper and shown on the news. Many believe that Sherri was either subconsciously remembering seeing these photos or she purposely described the same women from the photos. Also, for Halloween, just 3 days before Sherri disappeared, her husband and her 2 children and her all dressed up in Western attire, even sporting bandanas covering their mouth and nose, just like the 2 women Sherri said abducted her. Many speculate that when she had to make up a description of these 2 women, her Halloween costume from just a few days prior inspired her. The Shasta County Sheriff's Office also seemed to have their doubts about Sherri's story and the description of her captors. Although they did release sketches of these women to the public, they also released a statement saying, "There should not be a public safety or a personal safety concern by the public regarding this case," which many believe to mean, we are putting out these sketches to make it seem like we're looking for these women, but we're really not. There are also many who find it rather convenient that both of her assailants were Hispanic women. For one, Sherri said that they only spoke Spanish around her, which she doesn't understand, and therefore could not relay anything that the women said. There was also some troubling online behavior from Sherri that resurfaced after her reappearance. In 2003, someone using Sherri's first name and maiden name, Graf, posted on a white supremacist site. This post said that she was suspended from high school for, quote, beating up Latinos, and she got into fights, quote, all the time for defending myself against Latinos because I am white and proud of my blood and heritage, end quote. Sherri's Pinterest page was also found and made public, and it included a board she titled Cultural Differences, which included many memes and quotes, including quotes about being proud to be white and that, quote, people these days are overly sensitive pussies, end quote. Many believe that Sherri wasn't truly abducted, but left on her own accord and then blamed her disappearance on 2 Hispanic women on purpose. There are also many details about the disappearance itself that had many people doubting Sherri's story. One of the main factors that doesn't add up is what the motive was behind her abduction. What exactly was the purpose, and what were these 2 women planning on doing with Sherri? When this story first broke, a lot of people immediately jumped to human trafficking and believed that these women were going to sell Sherri into sex work of some sort because she was attractive. However, research shows that women like Sherri are not the usual target for human trafficking. In almost all cases, very young women, oftentimes teenagers, are targeted, and mostly people who would be easy to overpower and have no strong family relationship. For example, young women who have addiction problems or are sex workers. There's also the fact that Sherri was never sexually abused and that they released her on their own. She didn't have to escape from them. Research shows that with human trafficking, the individual is usually drugged somehow and is immediately moved out of the area. Sherri says she was never given any type of drug, and she estimated that the women did not drive her far. Sherri was found with cuts, bruises, and lesions. However, all of her wounds could possibly have been self-inflicted. Her long blonde hair was cut to her shoulders, which many believe was proof that her abduction was real, because who would cut their own hair, especially since it was said to be Sherri's trademark. However, cutting of the hair during torture is done to belittle and degrade an individual, especially women. It is used as a tactic to break someone down and make them feel ashamed. But when this is done, the captors almost always cut the individual's hair all the way off or cut it in a haphazard and unattractive way. Sherri's hair was reportedly cut to her shoulders and was cut pretty straight and was still long enough to style and put up in a small ponytail. Many speculate that if these women were trying to truly degrade her, they would have done a better job. Also, according to criminal profiler Pat Brown, if these women were truly part of human trafficking and were trying to sell Sherri, they would not beat her or cut her hair because these things would make her less desirable to sell. Sherri also only spent a few hours in the hospital after she was found, which made many question the severity of her injuries. Several reports said that she had lost about 10 pounds, and on her small frame she looked emaciated. Other reports say she had a broken nose and chain marks on her arms and legs. Sherri also told Sheriff Bosanko that she had an altercation with one of her captors, which resulted in Sherri cutting her right foot, but he says that no cut was seen on her foot or showed up in any photographs. In fact, there have never been any photos released of what Sherri looked like after her abduction, and the types of injuries she reported would usually require a more extensive hospital stay, at a minimum of a few days, not a few hours. Not only were the details of her abduction questioned, but an odd video of Sherri just minutes before she was found also had people questioning her reappearance. A few weeks after Sherri was found, the Reading police released security footage from a church, which shows Sherri running through the church parking lot just 7 minutes before she was found by the motorist on the side of the highway at 5 in the morning. In the video, which you can find on YouTube, you can see Sherri running around back and forth and in circles through the church parking lot. She does not go near the church building or look into the windows. In the video, she is seen wearing sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and has a chain around her waist, but she is still able to properly run. Some believe that she was simply trying to find help, but others believe that she wouldn't be looking for help at an empty church parking lot at 5 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, and was instead trying to work up a sweat before she was found to make it appear like she was worn out and disheveled. After Sherri's reappearance, as with any widely known public case, details about her personal life and history began to surface. Family members, old classmates, and members of the community began sharing details about Sherri that she most likely did not want to be made public. Several people close to the Papini family speculate that Sherri deals with some mental health issues. During the investigation into her abduction, the Shasta County Sheriff's Department released police call logs from 2003. In 2003, Sherri's mother, Loretta Graff, called the Sheriff's Department to report that her daughter Sherri had been harming herself and was blaming it on her. She said it wasn't the first time Sherri had done this and that she wanted it on record in case things escalated. There was also proof of a phone call from October 1st, 2000, where Sherri's sister Sheila Graff called the police to report that her sister Sherri had kicked down her back door and gone into her house when nobody was home. Later that same day, Sherri's father Richard also called the police to report that Sherri had vandalized his home as well. And 3 years later, in 2003, Richard called the police yet again to report that someone had withdrawn money from his account without his authorization, and he believed it to be his daughter, Sherri. Several months after Sherri was found, a person who claimed to be a family member of Keith and Sherri's used the site Reddit to expose Sherri. Reddit is an online forum site where members can comment on a host of different topics, including a Sherri Papini thread dedicated to discussing her case. Reddit requires participants claiming familial or official links to a subject or police investigation to pass a rigorous identification process before allowing them to comment on a case with authority. So basically, this person had to prove somehow to the moderators of Reddit that they were in fact related to Sherri Papini before being allowed to comment. This anonymous family member said, "I want to remain anonymous and out of the drama going on in the family right now, but I wanted to comment on something I know about Keith and his wife Sherri. Maybe it can shed some light on the case for you guys in some way. I'm hoping this gets solved too. I'm a family member of Keith and Sherri." The anonymous poster goes on to say that Sherri isn't a trimmer, which was speculated on some forums, but that her and Keith did smoke a lot of marijuana. She said that Sherri had a benzo addiction for many years, and benzo is short for benzodiazepine, which is a tranquilizer medication that is prescribed to people suffering with depression or anxiety, but they are often abused. The most common types of benzos are Valium or Xanax. The family member said that Sherri was prescribed the drug diazepam for anxiety, but was taken off the medication and relapsed several times over the years by buying other pills off the street. This person believes that Sherri could have possibly been on a bender and used the abduction as a way to cover it, or that maybe she got caught up with the wrong crowd because of drugs and something bad happened to her. Several people from the community, including people who attended high school with Sherri, also came forward to tell what they remembered of her. One person who chose to remain anonymous said that Sherri was always doing things to get attention. She would often pretend to be sick or make up lies to gain sympathy from others. Another anonymous community member said they believe Sherri might suffer from Munchausen syndrome, which is a mental disorder where people repeatedly and deliberately act as though they are sick when they really are not. This person believes that Sherri's life was getting boring and mundane, and she acted out in order to get the attention she craved. Digging into Sherri's past and high school years also uncovered something disturbing that again had many people questioning the legitimacy of her story. In 1998, 16-year-old Tara Smith, who was friends with Sherri Papini and in the same grade, vanished while she was jogging on the exact same road Sherri says she was taken from. Sadly, Tara Smith has never been found, and the main suspect in her disappearance is her martial arts instructor, Troy Zink. There is a lot of online talk that speculates that Sherri was somehow inspired or influenced by Tara's disappearance, even if it was subconsciously. And she took details from Tara's story when creating her own abduction story. Sherri reported that 2 Hispanic women abducted her, and since Tara was abducted 18 years prior, it seems very unrealistic that these 2 women were also Tara's abductors who decided to strike again in exactly the same way in the exact same location 18 years later. So before I get into the prevailing theories that surround this case and what could have been a possible motive for all of this, I'm going to discuss the last and maybe the most damning weird detail from this story. A few weeks after Sherri was found, Sergeant Brian Jackson of the Redding Sheriff's Department held a press conference and revealed that they had proof that Sherri had been corresponding via text message with a man in Michigan for several months before her disappearance. Although they had the exact texts, he did not reveal what they said, but that Sherri had met this man previously and appeared to be keeping in close contact with him, texting him daily for a few months, up until 2 days before she disappeared. Through these texts, officials could gather that Sherri and this man were supposed to meet up because he was coming to California for work, but that he canceled his trip. Sergeant Jackson said they actually traveled to Michigan to meet this man and concluded that he had no role in Sherri's disappearance and had an alibi which placed him in Michigan during the time of her disappearance. Another odd and unanswered detail is that after Sherri was found, they conducted a DNA sample on her body and found DNA from an unknown woman that did not match any records in the California database, and they also found DNA from an unknown male. This DNA did not match the man from Michigan or Sherri's husband, Keith. Sherri says there was never a man present to her knowledge during her captivity, and she has no idea where the DNA came from. All of this information makes many believe that either Sherri was possibly having a relationship with another man and escaped to spend time with him, or that when the man from Michigan canceled his trip to meet up with her, she was upset and she staged an abduction to get his attention. So now I'm going to get into the different theories surrounding this case and what many people believe could be motives. Legally and criminally speaking, currently the Sherri Papini case is silent, with no updates coming in from the Shasta Sheriff's Department. In the last statement Sheriff Tom Basenko gave, he said, "I wouldn't say it's cold. There's still several avenues we're looking at. Something is going to reveal itself someday." But nothing has been made public about the case in almost a year. Now, there are definitely some people who believe that Sherri Papini is telling the truth and that she really was abducted and beat by 2 Hispanic women. Many believe that no mother or wife could put her family through something like this and just make this story up. However, the people who believe Sherri's story are very hard to find. I have done about 10 hours of research on this, watching many news videos, YouTube videos, reading online articles, and looking through online forums. I have found a few people who support Sherri's story, but only a handful out of the hundreds of comments I have read. I have also read a few things from people who live in the Redding area, and they say the consensus around there is that the entire thing was a hoax and not true. I personally talked to someone who lives in Redding and says that Sherri's husband, Keith, actually recently came to her home to fix her TV because he is a technician through Best Buy, and that he is very friendly and quiet, but that nobody in Redding has seen Sherri since this all happened. She doesn't go out in public much or attend any outings. The press has been able to get 2 photos of her in the past almost 2 years since she was abducted, and both are from far away and do not show much. There are also some in Redding who say that they saw Sherri and her family eating pizza at a local pizza restaurant in Redding. From what I can gather from those who live in the Redding area, people are still hoping that they will get some answers about this case, but that the media frenzy has blown over and it's not really talked about much anymore. In the research I was able to find, there are 3 prevailing theories and motives I can find in regards to this case being a hoax, and I'm going to discuss each one separately. The first and most widely believed theory is that Sherri Papini planned the entire thing and staged it to look like an abduction to get away from her life. There are many factors that contribute to this theory, but the main one is the fact that there is evidence of her having a secret relationship with another man, and that there was unknown DNA found on her. Many think that Sherri was tired of her mundane life, that she was bored and wanted attention. She wanted to leave her husband and kids and get away from her responsibilities, and that she most likely ran away with another man. Some think that this other man was also involved and helped Sherri execute this plan, such as giving her a place to stay and purposely hitting her and injuring her for the bruises. Maybe Sherri just wanted to get away for a few weeks but didn't have an excuse why, and her and this man concocted a plan to make it look like a violent abduction so that when she came back, there wouldn't be any questions and her husband wouldn't leave her. Some also believe that Sherri did meet up with a man, but that he had nothing to do with the abduction story. Maybe Sherri truly wanted to run away from her life, so she put her phone somewhere it couldn't be tracked, and she left town with a mystery man. Maybe she was having fun for a while, but then started to regret her decision. Maybe she started missing her children, or maybe she saw the news coverage about her and realized that starting a new life wouldn't be easy. Or maybe perhaps things with this new man weren't as perfect as she thought they would be. Maybe she had a dream of leaving her stale life for something new and exciting, but then realized it wasn't what she imagined it would be, and she changed her mind. She could have made up this elaborate story, cut her hair, hit herself, and decided to make it look like an abduction. She put chains around her waist and went and ran around the church parking lot to get sweaty and appear tired. And honestly, this is the theory that I believe most. It reminds me a lot of the book and movie Gone Girl. I think that Sherri was feeling very unfulfilled in her life. She didn't work, but her children attended daycare full-time, so perhaps she was bored and wanted some excitement or attention. I think that the combination of possibly having mental health issues and drug addiction issues mixed with seeking attention and feeling bored really sparked something in Sherri that made her want to do something extreme, or possibly she wasn't thinking straight and didn't know how else to get out of her life and was feeling trapped. I think she was talking to other men and just decided one day to pursue something with one of them and wanted to get away from the restrictions she felt in her life. I think she got scared and maybe realized that actually her life wasn't really that bad before and wanted to go back, but needed a story that would cast her as a victim and not a cheater and a liar. People who believe this theory also seem to believe that the Shasta County Sheriff's Department also believed that this was a hoax perpetrated by Sherri, but that they do not want to appear to be victim-blaming Sherri, and therefore are not working further on the case. Basically, they aren't going to press charges, but they aren't actually looking for these 2 Hispanic women or putting any more time or resources into the case. I am definitely someone who likes to see justice being served. It makes me feel sick to my stomach when I know somebody committed a crime and got away with it. In this case, if Sherri really did make this up, I really hope that some new evidence comes forward and she will be charged with this crime. The Shasta County Sheriff's Department put in hundreds of thousands of dollars into the search for Sherri, and the entire Redding area and the whole country, honestly, were very invested in this story, thinking that this sweet mother and wife was out there being tortured. And I find it sick that she could possibly have orchestrated this whole thing with zero consequence or repercussions. My guess is that this case will keep silent for as long as it takes and that nothing will come of this, but I'm hoping that someday something will eventually be revealed that leads to the truth. The second prevailing theory that I could find in my research is that Keith and Sherri Papini came up with this plan together in order to get money. In fact, many online speculate that this isn't the first scam the Papinis have been part of. Many point out the fact that Sherri does not work and that Keith works at Best Buy. It is a decent job, but probably not enough to support their children attending daycare full-time while living in a nice, large home and driving 2 nice cars. To many, the income the Papinis bring in simply just does not correlate to the lifestyle they live. Just 2 days after Sherri was reported missing, a GoFundMe account was created by Keith's sister, Suzanne Papini, on behalf of Keith to give funds towards searching for Sherri, even though the sheriff's department was holding community searches already. The GoFundMe reached its goal of $50,000 soon after Sherri was found. Keith's sister, Suzanne, is the proprietor of the account, meaning she is the only one who can withdraw the money. The GoFundMe is still up online, and it appears that no real update was ever posted, other than saying, quote, "Thank you all so much for your donations. I am very happy that the Papini family asked me to help get this GoFundMe account established. Your generosity, concern, and prayers are very much appreciated by the Papini family." End quote. There was never any update posted about how Sherri is doing or the details of her abduction. Also, according to people in the Redding area, Keith bought a new truck just a few months after Sherri was found, possibly with this GoFundMe money. There were also 2 interviews that Keith did with People magazine, including a front-page story. Keith was paid for both of these interviews, although the exact amount has not been disclosed. Many who believe this theory point to the fact that when Keith came home and noticed Sherri wasn't there, he did not try calling or texting her or waiting for her to come home from a run or the store or something with the children. Instead, he immediately jumped to the conclusion that something bad had happened to her, and he used the Find My iPhone app, which led him to her phone on the side of the road, which from photos was folded very neatly with her headphones. Many see this as a very odd thing to do. And the third and probably most obscure theory that I could find is that the entire thing was orchestrated by Bethel Church, a church from Redding, California. The main factor in this theory is the hostage negotiator Cameron Gamble, who Sherri's friend Lisa Jeter asked to be the liaison between the media and the anonymous donor who offered the $50,000 towards Sherri's safe return. However, the title hostage negotiator was self-made by Cameron Gamble, and he's actually a self-defense instructor who is a member of and works for Bethel Church and teaches self-defense classes to teenagers who are doing work as missionaries. Cameron Gamble was in the Air Force for 3 years before being discharged, although the Air Force will not release details on his discharge, and they said that he received the same basic combat survival training course that all members are put through, and received no extra self-defense training. Once Cameron Gamble joined Bethel Church, which many describe as a super church, he used their platform to distribute flyers and brochures about his experience, and even created his own business called Project Taken that helped teach women about self-defense, all while being supported by Bethel Church. In fact, many online posted links to a page on the Bethel Church website that had a button that you could click to donate money to Cameron Gamble's business. But now when you follow the link, which I did, it shows the page can no longer be found. Bethel Church is described by many as a fundamentalist church that operates more like a cult, where it is extremely hard to leave the church, and most of its workings operate through members donating large amounts of money. Many say it really isn't about the religion, but it's really just a big corrupt business. A lot of people who believe the Bethel Church theory think that the church was behind this story, that the Papinis are members of the church and they created the story to get money, as well as to boost Cameron Gamble's career. In fact, the man who married Keith and Sherri and is a close friend of theirs is a deacon at Bethel Church. Some even believe that higher-up officials like Sheriff Tom Pasenko and the mayor, Missy MacArthur, who said in a statement that, quote, "Anyone who doesn't believe Sherri are just trolls," end quote, are actually also both involved in this Bethel Church conspiracy as well. So, like any other case I cover, there is too much information out there for me to properly cover it all. I could probably talk for an hour about each of these theories, but for your sake and mine, I won't do that. But if you're interested in this case and you want to know more, I encourage you to do some digging and see what you can find. I found so many other theories that people were putting together and different timelines people were constructing, and I just don't have the time to travel down every wormhole. But based off the evidence I was able to present today, I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me and with most people that this was a hoax curated by Sherri Papini in order to get away from her life? Or do you think something different? The consensus I find with people I know is they aren't exactly sure what they believe, but they definitely think that something is fishy about this case and that Sherri's story just doesn't add up. Stories like this are crazy to me because it makes you think about what people are capable of. If this beautiful, normal, stay-at-home mom could execute something like this and actually make money off it and get away with it, then who's to say someone else couldn't get away with way more? It's just baffling to really think about what people in this country can do with no repercussions to their actions. But if you disagree with me, please let me know. I would really love to chat more about this. This is a case that just is mind-boggling to me. And I never want somebody to agree with me just because I'm the one that did the research. I would love to have some discourse and dialogue about this case and hear what you guys think. As always, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Weird on the Rocks Podcast and my website, weirdontherocks.weebly.com. Please subscribe where you're listening right now and rate and review on iTunes. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, cheers and stay weird.